the big news, well, there's a few news stories. One is that Bolton has gone, and he claims he quit, and Trump says he was made to resign or fired, but that's irrelevant. The point is, we all make mistakes, and appointing him anywhere near anything means warmongering. That's what Bolton stands for. He wants war. And the fact that he was allowed to be in that position is unforgivable. It's incompetence. It's poor judgment. And I don't see Trump as having the decision making to fire him or hire him. So I'm not really pointing my finger at him. And we all know those behind the scenes. All the U.S. administrations are Chabad administrations. I'm tending to think the whole kind of planet is. But he wanted war. You know, the last straw may have been, I mean, he's just a logistical person, you know, he's not conceptual. That I attribute to the higher religious authorities that rule from behind. Well, that Iranian ship, it was called Grace 1, and they changed the name of it, and it was taken in Gibraltar by U.S. insistence, and then they let it go, and it went, said it was going to Greece, and didn't go to Greece, said it was going to Turkey, didn't go to Turkey, and then it went to Syria. And by the way, you could see this at all time on the internet. They have live monitoring where you see the paths of the ships. It turned off its transponder, a day or whatever just before its final destination. So it unloaded its oil, it seems, in Syria. There were reports that it sold its oil before that, but of course, it's hocus pocus. So it just took its oil. And of course, you can imagine Bolton jumping up and down saying, well, bomb the ship, abduct the ship, stop the ship, and nobody does anything. And it calls into question the real power of Iran and why the US is so reticent to exert its strength or power. It, watched its super advanced drone get shot down and did nothing in response. And I'm not suggesting a war is a good idea, but the US is defeating itself. It's in a defeatist path for its own projected policies. So we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. It's all corrupt. The world is corrupt. Iran probably has a lot of power in a lot of areas that we're not familiar with. It's a huge stakeholder, maybe half, in the largest gas field in the UK. How often does that hit the news? Of course, that's all sanctioned now. But it's got some power that is causing the West to back off. In particular, Britain. Iran has still got a British ship, you could argue, held hostage. Moving on, but hoping it's the end of what we call neocons, who are just front men, people that go out and commit war crimes, don't put their names and faces on them. They push other people in front to take the slack. You've got the Israeli Prime Minister saying he's going to annex the Jordan Valley, what we call the east of the occupied territories, or the east of Israel, the border with Jordan. And that's just in the last 24 hours. And it's always been on the cards. All the time these settlers are occupying the West Bank, it's always been with a nod and a wink, and there's no other purpose than to annex the land. This isn't the same thing as talking about Greater Israel, which is a meme that is repeated by everyone, from the Nile to the Euphrates. Well, that's a plan that was envisaged, but there are 1,000 other plans that were envisaged, and they could become popular and repeated. There's absolutely no substance to the notion that Israel could occupy such a large area. It cannot occupy 10 kilometers of Lebanon, or the Gaza Strip, or what else? Any of the Arab areas. Go on. Unfortunately, nothing is going to change now that Bolton has gone. Everything will continue as it was. And we see Israel continuously making bombing raids on Syria. What should be taken note of is that there was this meeting in Jerusalem between the Russian defense advisor, along with Bolton, the American defense advisor, and ever since then there were increasing bombing raids by Israel, which again always calls into question the collusion of Russia. No one is sure about this. No one is adamantly categorical about Russia's loyalties. There's really a war going on against Islam, and so a lot of people, against Sunnis, and so a lot of people can unfortunately ally themselves with one another in this war. But that's what Russia's stake is in Syria. It's not about supporting Assad. It's about getting rid of any kind of Sharia law notions. Well, they've been publishing the dialogue that took place in the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul at the time of the Khashoggi assassination. And 12 minutes before he arrived, you've got two people talking, very important people. The whole team were communicating with Saudi Arabia at this time, with the one of the number one assistants to MBS. And in fact, they flew to Turkey and they stopped in United Arab Emirates on the way to Turkey, this hit squad. Absolutely brutal dialogue. One man saying he's never cut up a warm body before, and the other man discussing how they'll put it all in suitcases, cut it up, put it all in suitcases, and carry it out. So, I mean, the whole thing was so clearly premeditated, and the recordings go, far more recordings than what I've just mentioned to you, including from his initial visit the week before. So I guess these recordings are the only reason there's any kind of judicial process taking place, but does anyone trust the judicial process in Saudi Arabia, or anywhere for that matter? There's a lot of volatility and uncertainty about the financial world. A lot of people are worried, and it's all, first of all, it needs to be recognized that it's corrupt by its very nature. This is a mark of esteem for fiat money, which is what's running the world, except Russia and China keep having headlines that they've got buying record amounts of gold. So as the economy becomes shaky and we become uncertain about our future, there is more and more talk of the benefits of a command economy, like under communist rule, or at least partially like that, not so-called market economy, which is nothing but a lot of gangsterism and nepotism and all the bad things you can think of. But a command economy would offer a cushion if there's a crash, or when there's a crash. You still might get free health care or electricity or water, the basic needs. And that's all going to be absent. I was reading Orlov, and I kind of paraphrasing some major points he made, which were those that I've just said. I think Mao Zedong had this idea of perpetual revolution, and I think Iran has a similar kind of phrase where you're continuously fighting, sort of keeping a revolution alive. And we need that continuous battle to put the profiteers on the back seat, and that's totally absent in our current form. What's happening is everything's okay for profit. Privatizing militaries, mercenaries, prisoners, you name it. If you can make a profit from it, it's good. Destroy the forest. That's what we're living through. Put poison on your food, it makes a profit. And then they tell us a lie that the wars are for profit, and they're not. Not in the short term. The long-term profit is you're virtually importing slave labor by forcing all the migrants to take all the cheap jobs. The thing is, with this privatizing, profiteering, they put the corporations in a state of exalted status, and they're protected by laws, and they have the rights of a human, and it's endless what they can do. They dictate to us what accounts we can have or not. They close our accounts, they open them. They're the bosses. But as above, so below. Just take it a bit further, go up the ladder behind them, and you're going to see everything is privately owned. You've got a few families, not least the Rothschilds. And they've got this veneer of religious concern, but they've forgotten things about, forgiving debts and things that are enshrined in religion. So they've cherry-picked what they need, but that bonds them together. And we have this illusion that some people are a race. That's another video. So if it's all private corporations as we see them, behind that and above that is also all private. This whole state, government, parliaments, whatever, White House, it's a facade of the private ownership behind it. You have to stop and think about the Rothschilds. I mean, I think they're just a name. I've no doubt they're super wealthy, but I mean, or that they have so much power. But I mean, they can't be the only ones in town, and they must need an army of thousands to enforce their needs, so to speak. It's a pyramid. But you can look at some things like Reuters and I think AP, and they're Rothschild owned. So you can say, well, these reporters, these journalists are under Rothschild pay, and that's sort of why you get, the spin and the angle that is missing some of the truth. But by saying they're on Rothschild's pay, that's a mistake, because you and I are also on Rothschild's pay. They own the whole game, and we're all discussing things like we're in an age of freedom. But if we realize that we're all under Rothschild's pay, we might come together, because we are all under Rothschild's pay. Talking of governments and facades, you've got this whole Brexit story unfolding in Britain. It's Act 2, Act 40, God knows what it is. Nobody knows what it is. But there's some people behind the scenes that stop and search and steer it the way they want it. But I never thought much of Boris Johnson personally, but seeing him with all those police behind him as he gives a speech puts him in the gutter. That's the most horrible, rude message to be giving. And he is behaving in that manner. So maybe he's, friends with Bolton and Trump and so forth. It's about impunity, just doing what you want. And who is he? He's nobody. But recently he had a series of meetings, and the Israeli Prime Minister was there to give him his orders. Now, I'm not saying whether he took them or whether he's competent or anything, but that went on, and that's very important. Britain is a good gunner. It's sending 10,000 troops abroad. Almost always there's 10,000 troops abroad in a combat zone. It's continuously active in the military zone, fighting wars for Israel. Well, today is September the 11th, and that is the big thing that unfolded and we'll never forget, and maybe we'll never know about, and not the majority of people believe in it if you're in the West, in my opinion. And not many people believe the official story that they were told about it. And it's caused the deaths of millions, this war on terror. And we all just buy it, whether we believe it or not. We're powerless, is the epoch we're living through. What more can you say about it? But we are in a time of unrest. You can see protests in France, Paris, Hong Kong, Moscow, in Britain. People are not happy with how things have gone. And essentially, we're being impoverished. Speaking for Europe and America, I don't know as much about Russia, but Putin did alter the pensions. I think it was the age, etc. And this is what caused him to lose a lot of support. And it's like there's a war on the people. It's dreadful. Okay, I've omitted my personal situation where I haven't made a video for a couple of weeks. I'm working on a long-term solution. This is a stopgap intermittent thing. Well, I love doing this every day. I lost the rhythm. But anyway, please help with a donation. You can believe they've been very scarce. I'll be making videos as soon as possible. I just want to be somewhere on a kind of permanent level and feel some freedom to speak. And so I am working on a novel, unique idea. But anyway, Please help with a donation if you can. There are links on the screen and below the video, hopefully. And I'll see you soon. Cool.